Hi, I'm Lia De Cicco. Welcome. This is Teacher Talk.
Hey everyone, this is episode 8 of How to Talk to Teachers, a series of webcasts and podcasts where I bring in some really forward-thinking education leaders to help parents navigate school systems and advocate for their children in partnership with the educators. Our topics included things that are top of mind for parents, including technology, AI in particular, and well-being. So let's kick off today's episode and talk about how we can teach for the real world. We often get stuck in the way that we were taught and is expecting and assuming that that's the way our kids needs to be taught. And that's not really working out for us, is it? New skills, new world, new way to teach for kids that are going to really take over. So we got to teach today's kids for tomorrow's leaders for a world that's relevant for them. So let's reach back for a second. Think about how you were taught, like I just mentioned, and remember how we used to have one subject at a time. We went from math to English to social science to gym, recess, lunch, and so on and so forth. What if there was another way to do that that, again, was really reflective of how we work in the real world? That's something that we call project-based learning. So it's more than just English, math, science. It's one big theme, one big idea where we bring that into one big project and then we connect it to the real world if we're really good at it. So remember the sage on the stage, I talk about it in How to Talk to Teachers, was the teacher, the kind of teacher that we had. She parroted, we listened, we memorized, we wrote it back on the test. So this other model, teachers act as facilitators or guides on the sides where they help students through the process of learning rather than providing that direct information through this project-based work. So it's an instructional approach that incorporates the facilitator method, so facilitating guide on the side method, and it's known for short as PBL. And it really increases engagement, retention of knowledge, and the development of these really important skills that we need for the new world. It's interesting. We heard about Bloom's last week, taxonomy. We remember something that's meaningful. So basically, with this kind of approach, students gain knowledge and skills by working on this project over an extended period of time by exploring real-world problems and challenges, and that helps them to develop a deeper understanding of through an active way to learn, as opposed to the passive way where we sat there as good little children waiting for that gold star for being quiet. So the key elements of project-based learning, again, real-world relevance, very important. That's inquiry-based, so it starts with a question. There's collaboration, also one of those skills that we need for today's world. Creativity and critical thinking. And then student autonomy. So you're going to give the students space. The teacher is no longer that sage that holds all the information. The teacher's going to watch what happens and guide and direct, which is really great for the kids because you're giving them room to explore and make learning meaningful and active for them. And then there's a presentation of the work. There's got to be some sort of concretization of the work or something that we can see that say, oh, that they built or they developed or they created. Because remember, right now in today's world, learning is creation, active creation of output. Doesn't it sound cool? I mean, projects were always fun. I remember my projects, but I don't remember what I did in grade 10 math. Maybe that's on purpose. So today, we're really, really lucky to have Kelly Baklacheff. She's the superintendent from Saskatchewan. And she's going to give us some insight into project-based learning because I think she's someone that does it exceptionally well and is a real leader of PBL here in Canada. She and I met in Cape Town, South Africa at a worldwide conference celebrating excellence in teaching in tech and the innovative use of tech. And we became fast friends and we've continued to be friends over the years. And I continue to watch her grow and soar and have incredible impact on education transformation, particularly with her work at PBL, but in other areas as well. So here's her bio. She's superintendent of student programming at Saskatchewan Distant Learning Corporation. It's a provincial online school in Saskatchewan. That's everything student related and curriculum related for instruction and assessment. So this is a big brain we're talking to today. She's got a career spanning Saskatchewan and Manitoba and a focus on French immersion, Indigenous education, distance education, and personalized learning. She's always driven by what's best for kids. Welcome, my dear friend, Kelly. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me, Leah. It's an absolute pleasure to be here and get to actually sit down and have a full-length chat. It's been quite a while since we've had a chat about education. You know, we connect on a lot of other pieces, but excited to dive back into chatting about the benefits of project-based learning.
So I want to congratulate you on, like, since we first met. My God, we met in what, 2010 or something like that? And
you
I've
know.
watched you grow from a teacher to become a real leader across Canada. And this, as a teacher, we love to see people grow and soar. You're doing that. So congratulations. I couldn't be more proud of you, Kelly. You're an inspiration. So thank you for that. So you're a thinker, you're a leader, you're a doer in Canada. And I want to hear a bit about your approach to project-based learning, because people, how I met you, I came to visit you. We were in Manitoba at Oskayak High School. And I was so struck by one of the projects that you were working on with the kids, and it was connected to Indigenous culture. Can you tell us a bit about that project and help us frame a really great example of what project-based learning could do or problem-based learning could do, and how successful you were with making that come alive and relevant for Indigenous people in Manitoba, Indigenous students?
Yeah, so that was one of the highlights, I have to say, of my career was a SkyX actually in Saskatchewan.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And it's all good. It's all good. If people are listening and wondering where that is, it's in Saskatoon. And I had an opportunity to work at that school for a couple of years. And our focus certainly was on engagement of students and graduation and student success. And when you think about the students that we had there and what they were looking to achieve, graduation of high school and prepare for what comes next, we really had to talk about who they are and what their interests were and connect learning to that. And that's really the foundation of what problem-based, project-based learning is all about. We looked at things differently, and we wanted to provide students with more time to focus and get deeper into their learning on different curricular outcomes and courses. So we did double credits, I guess, and we combined outcomes from a couple of different courses to give them more time. And we framed it. That one was particularly interesting. We worked with a bunch of students around problem-based learning. So we provided them with cases that they needed to solve. But before designing it, we got to know who they were, and that many of them had children in daycare in the city. And one of the problems they wanted to solve was developing an outdoor space so that the students, their children, could experience the land and connect to their culture. And so the problem that we were working on that particular year, how do you approach a school division, a board of education, to get funding to develop at the time a outdoor daycare space that was very much connected to the land and to the culture? And so we worked through a number of pieces, but part of project-based learning is having the right skills to be able to actually do the work and be prepared to take the lead, because much of it is student-driven. Certainly the teacher's there, but like you said, the guide on the side, activator of learning, the students have to have skills to be able to take the lead. And so part of the learning that we did, we connected to a communications curriculum. And so that included, how do you communicate? How do you do a presentation to, a group of people and be able to share your why and really detail that out and develop a project, a timeline, and a budget and different pieces like that. So all those pre-skills they needed to have in place to do that. And because this was so connected to solving a problem in their lives, these students came in on weekends and just begged us to get it right. You saw them come to the presentation dressed right up. And that's that piece, right? When it becomes something you own, you're very connected to it and you want this to move forward. In the end, these students are very successful. They did end up writing a departmental in Saskatchewan. Some
Departmental.
of our that would be a provincial a provincial exam around the end of that course. So even using this particular model, which would be different than maybe a traditional model, the students are very successful on that provincial exam at the end of the course.
That's really great, because I know that there's often a lot of problems even getting these kids to come to school. So them showing up, number one, is a big thing. And we want to highlight here that the project was connected to their own lives. So it was real world. So that's one of the things for project-based learning. It gave them leadership and autonomy because it was their own. And they showed up on the weekend, never mind come to school. They showed up on the weekend because they felt connected to it. Tell me when I walked in there, I went, oh my God, what did it end up being? Tell me, because I want our viewers to understand how amazing it was. So you talked about the learning that was involved to get to do the work. Tell me what the output was. What would I see if I walked into the Oskayak daycare?
Well, actually, what happened was it ended up being attached to one of the high schools in the city. So it wasn't even the one in that particular attached to that particular school. There were a number of different groups working on different locations, but in the end, the students came together and they designed a model by hand and
That's what I saw.
yeah, we took it to a senior admin board meeting and the students presented. And they certainly know that, cost is always a factor. So they looked at alternative ways connecting with the community to make this happen. And in the end, that daycare did get built based
So
on
how was it
that.
connected to their culture? Why was it different from any other daycare? What did I see?
Well, again, we can talk about outdoor learning and things like that, but this was land-based. And this was, talking about who's actually going to be at the daycare with their children, what stories they're sharing. They had put in, I guess, all of the materials within it were land-based. So logs and rocks, the teepee piece, they had to do the learning around the teepees, teepee teachings and things like that. And then their children got to experience that. So really moving the dial on children learning very young to connect with the land and connect with their culture and having the supports in place to have those conversations. So it not only connects the kids to their culture all day long, but that continues the conversation beyond the school day when their parents were at school doing this work. So I mean, a deep learning and something that these students, connect to. I've heard from some of them years later, and still those are the pieces that they remember the most. Back to what you said in the intro, right?
Yes.
And so, I mean, here's the thing though, this approach wasn't for everyone in the group of kids, right? Of students. And that's the other piece to keep in mind with project-based learning. Everybody has a role to play. Some take the lead in terms of they're the manager of the whole project. Some are like, I'm going to do the research. Some are going to do, I'm going to do the presentation and put that together. And some are like, I want to talk at the presentation, right?
That would
So
have
it's
been me.
like, yeah, yeah, it would be for sure, right? And so everyone brings something and they need to know themselves. So that's part of this is getting to know yourself, that emotional intelligence side of things. And that doesn't come without some actual intentional work, right? So that's also the key. And so if you think of project-based learning from K through 12, it looks very different across the spectrum. But one thing is the intentional teaching of those skills that you need to have to be successful around communication, the critical thinking, the problem solving skills, etc. So that is across the board, but how deep you go and what that looks like looks a little bit different. Not to mention self-regulation. I mean, things, it is frustrating for some students. And if we're not careful, it can leave a bad taste in their mouth, right? They want to go back to a traditional, what they've experienced. Success in project-based learning, problem-based learning, it takes time. It takes modeling and giving the student voice and choice within it. So it's very intentional. It's not just a free for all. Teachers actually really need to take time to teach the process of it and what that looks like, and be really talking about the benchmarks or the milestones within the learning to reach that end goal. And if we're not careful, it just becomes, you do and it's all about the presentation at the end. That's the piece where project-based learning is the formative, the learning throughout, right? And those milestones. And it is cross-curricular oftentimes, but it's really focusing on the skills and the going beyond the four walls of a classroom or school throughout the whole process, really connecting to the day-to-day and the world beyond the four walls of the school.
Wow, Kelly, that's a lot. You just gave us a lot. I'm going to try and remember everything I was trying to. Okay, remember that. So first off, I'm hearing the teaching is intentional, and what you're giving these kids. So beyond the flashy presentation, there's all this pre-work to do, where what the kids are learning really are life skills. These are life skills that they're going to remember and they're going to use in the real world. These are skills that they're using that are necessary for jobs in today's world.
Yes.
So they're learning that intentionally before they get to the big splash of the presentation. And that's what a teacher has to prepare for when they're building out a unit or a lesson or whatever that's based in project-based learning. Fair?
Fair. And I would say, the key here is earlier on, you talked about AI and different trends in education that are happening, but fundamentally the shift away from education being gaining knowledge versus the skills you need to gain the knowledge and use that knowledge is becoming the forefront of what we need to do. And that becomes all of our jobs, parents and teachers, community members, all of us alike, is throwing that out to our youth and challenging them to develop those skills. And, AI is a perfect example, right? It's the prompt engineering side of what are you asking? And then when you get something, are you looking at it critically to be able to communicate what you're really trying to say? That's the same thing with project-based learning.
You are so smart because you just taught, maybe unconscious and you don't know, but you brought in a couple of the elements from the other webcast podcasts that I've done with some other really smart people around AI and how AI is going to give us that knowledge, whereas in the past you and I were taught go find the knowledge, or the teacher has the knowledge and only the teacher's going to know if it's correct or not. AI is going to give us the knowledge, but project-based learning ties so beautifully in with AI because you can start with the AI, but you still have to go through that intentional pre-learning that you talked about so beautifully to get to the end product.
Yep.
So if we start with AI or some technology that's going to give us the content and the knowledge, the information, we're going to do our homework, we're going to check it, we're going to do all that stuff. And then the next phase is going to be the project. Okay, what are we going to do with this? How are we going to integrate it? And how we're going to get these life skills? And then the third part is the output, right? So thank you for sharing with us part 2 of how learning can happen. Because the AI is here, we learned from Professor Housington, that 94% of kids are using it already. So we're stuck in the middle right now. And I think the reason I wanted to talk about PBL, because you're at the forefront of it, how important it is to bridge what AI can do for us, but then to really get cooking with the project-based stuff, get those really important life skills, and then apply them, concretize them, and show me what you created. So I think that's pretty fantastic, Kelly. Thank you so much for connecting those dots for me. Now, absolutely. I'm hoping that parents are going to be really excited about this because I loved projects because it got away from them. Saving math and all that good stuff that we've done. How can teachers start to implement PBL in their classrooms, and how can parents appropriately ask, are you working this way? Are you thinking along these lines? How did you start it? What was your suggestions to teachers and parents around implementing this and getting started?
I'm going to chunk this so we can debrief between the three things that I want to focus on, I guess, because I think it's 3 different ways, right? So how do you get started with this? I think the teachers need to start with some data, get some qualitative data, learn who their students are, and talk to the parents and together, find out what their hopes and dreams are and get to know, because we as teachers, we walk alongside with the families, right? Mm-hmm. And so once you have that information, it opens the door for a lot of interesting conversations that you can have with students, talk about what they're interested, how they're interested in learning, and then use some of that feedback to kind of go, okay, let's try this out, without dismissing, that there is a time and place for some of that whole class instruction and, relaying some knowledge and some particular foundational pieces, reading, writing, math, right? Not suggesting you throw that out by any stretch. It is foundationally, it's getting to know the learners that you're working with, because everyone is unique. On the flip side, maybe I'll pause there and see, because I want to talk a little bit about the experience I've had with parents as you try to implement this.
So I was hoping you were going to say that, because it starts with knowing your kids and knowing what your passions are and connecting with your kids. Because if you don't do that, whatever project you're going to do isn't going to be meaningful. And we just talked about how important that is. So get to know your kids. Parents get to really know who your kids are, so you can bring that qualitative data, as Kelly called it, and teachers get to know your kids, right? That's joyful. That's joyful learning. I keep using that phrase because I think it's what I'm hoping for, joyful learning. That doesn't even seem like, oh God, I got to go to school. It's joyful. You want to do it. So step one, Kelly just unpacked that for us. Get to know the kids. Find out what their passions are. Okay?
Yeah.
Step two.
Yeah, and I would suggest in all of that is embracing the notice and wonder. This is all about noticing and wondering, right? And you do that both as the parent side and the teacher side and the student. So often our kids are very young and they notice and wonder, and then I've always thought, where does that go? Why does that stop sometimes? And so PBL really focuses in on that, and so in terms of that relationship with families, I think that's crucial to have those conversations. But sometimes the stumbling point with families is their own experience in school. What they have got, how they learned becomes the norm and what they think their kids should be experiencing. And so when you have those conversations with families and work alongside, even, connect with them, get to know, the whole unpack the learner, unpack the family together. You can have those conversations and say, hey, how was your experience in school? And then it's opening the door for conversation. And then that leads to, okay, it's not just about telling the parents what you're doing in class, invite them in to experience it as well. That's always a great opportunity to do this. But your third question was, how do parents ask for it? And that is one of those pieces where is given the opportunity from the teachers in the school to share who your kids are and what your hopes and dreams are, that's where you pop it in and say, this is what I know to be the best way for them to learn, and I can support them by doing these pieces. But, it's just opening the door for those conversations, really.
That's fantastic. I love, love, love the notice and wonder. I love that. Because I think in my utopia, that is the role of the teacher. And this is what I call for in How to Talk to Teachers. When I reimagine the next iteration of teacher, I call it the career calling coach. And if the technology is going to take care of all the stuff that kept us so busy, that drudgery, now the teacher has this space for notice and wonder, to curate passion, to create these projects, to talk to parents, to get kids into the community for that intentional learning. I think we could do this in Kelly, 15 years ago, we talked, we should go to school. And we had all these ideas and we want to do all this great stuff. Even the notion of school has changed. Our notion of bricks and mortar has changed. So this conversation is we're pretty much doing what we said we wanted to do together. I want to just say that and celebrate that with you. Yeah. But I think that you've touched on so many important things that parents can understand and parents can consume about how this can help their kids. So many really, really salient, important points. And just even the language that you're using, I'm learning. I'm always learning with you.
And I want to go back, I sometimes as an educator, you forget who your audience is. So I use qualitative and quantitative data. That's the difference between the numbers and the narrative. And what, there's a story. There's a story that goes with every single student, person in this world. It's not just about the numbers at the end of how you do it. It's the story of how you get there. And so, there's growth. And this is all about reaching your full potential and having, being wrapped around by your teachers and your family and to get there and allow you to do that deep learning. Whatever way you like to learn best, there's opportunity for all of that within this approach of project-based learning.
Oh, Kelly, I think you're fabulous. That's never going to stop. I applaud the work that you're doing. I think it's fantastic. It's a really different way to learn. I think it hits the mark in terms of where we are and what we need to be doing. I think our dreams have come true to do this work together and really pushing for this shift where it becomes seamless. And this is just the way that kids learn. I like the fact that you have also said, listen, we're not going to do away with instruction. Sometimes it's not worth throwing out the baby with the bathwater. There are some things about our systems that are really good, that are standing the test of time. But we are in this really wonderful and crazy, chaotic place of shift right now. We're in the middle of it. I think we all have to do our part to move us through it. And you talked about educator, our language, the jargon that we use when you and I talk, and we understand all this stuff. And the intent here with the book, with How to Talk to Teachers, with Teacher Talk, the podcast, the website, is to give parents that language so they can understand it, explain it to them so they can have these conversations. So with project-based learning, they have a new word. They have a couple of new words. They have project-based learning. They have intentional learning. They have notice and wonder, all these things. Take them away and use them in your conversations with teachers if you're going to approach them with an idea of how a class can do something that's community-based, connected to the kids' passion, that's going to provide output so the kids can learn how to get to that output in ways and with skills that are going to support them and help them in their careers outside of school. So Kelly, other than OSCIAC, have you had any other successes with project-based learning that you want to share? I just want to put a spotlight on you because you've done some incredible work and you're the go-to gal or person in Canada for this.
I think that I have shifted. I mean, I've shifted over my career to focusing on student-driven learning. So project-based learning is one piece and one approach to what I define personalized learning, where it's student-led. Oftentimes you can think about technology being that support and guiding, where students go. But for me, it's personalized learning is where the student knows where they need to end up, have the skills to get there and be able to articulate and develop their learning plan with their supports of their teachers, etc. And of course, families to be involved with that. And again, this approach really does take a lot of skill development from early on, and you keep growing that, right? Not suggesting you can't just start, at any kind of grade level, but the best approach is to continuously grow from the beginning towards this. So PBL, I guess, is one way of doing this type of learning. And so as I've been working at the system level and in a couple of different organizations, this is something that you talk about, like, how do you implement this philosophy of learning systemically? So, in my previous school division, that was certainly something we were doing at a system level. And implementing those pieces around culture in the school, culture in the classroom, character, that whole side of self-regulation, emotional intelligence, being really deliberate about how that's being taught and how we're measuring growth, and having families connected and understanding what we're doing. And so that was very transparent and visible. And then comes in the skills and the knowledge piece. And so it's talking about transfer of responsibility. And that's a bit of teacher lingo, but what that really means is who's leading the learning. And again, back to there's a time and place for a teacher to lead it. And there's a time for teacher and student to do it together. Maybe it's, child and parent to do it together. And then eventually, the learner takes on that leadership and they drive their learning. And it's not always for everyone. You're at different spots all the time, but that's really what the focus was at a system level, working in each of the schools. And again, every school did things a little bit different based on the students they had in their school.
Yeah.
And so that was there. And now I'm in a very interesting role working in a provincial online school. And so taking this approach around, I'm just going to say voice and choice, and ensuring that students have the skills they need to have voice and choice and effectively dive deep into their learning and have opportunities for project-based learning, etc., has been very interesting to look at as we develop content and courses. We focus on particular foundational outcomes and then move into that cross-curricular approach. Many of the things we've talked about today can be done in an online world environment. And for us, it's thinking it's not online learning, it's distance education. And that's where that teacher and the family is very involved. So yeah, it's fun. It's fun to dream. And that's part of that notice and wonder piece. I think the hopes and dreams conversations, that you can call it whatever you want, but what are the hopes and dreams for every one of our students, every one of our children? I think that's kind of a crucial piece and a success that allows you to move into that instructional side of things and what will help the students reach their full potential.
Wow, Kelly, there you are. There you are. You've just shown us your entire spirit. I can't think of a more lovely way to end this conversation and end this discussion. I'm right there with you. We've been dreaming and hoping together for a long time. We're going to see this through in our careers, and we're going to be friends forever.
Yes, we will.
Infinity and beyond. And I'm very grateful for that. And I can't thank you enough for your time, for all the work that you've done and that you continue to do. I'm going to be right beside you, as I said, hoping and dreaming for a better world for our kids, watching, learning, asking you questions, sometimes bugging you. That's just the nature of our friendship. So,
Always here for each other, Leah. All of it, and hashing out our fun ideas. I think we're curious with each other, and that's what it's all about. Curious and supporting each other, and putting out all those crazy ideas and making them into reality that makes sense for who the learners are that we're working with.
even if it's in South Africa looking at penguins, stuff happens, right, Kelly?
Sure did, but we learned a lot that day, didn't we?
Yeah. Kelly Baklacheff, thank you so much. You're a treasure. I'm looking forward to getting out there to see you at some point. Maybe speaking at some of your schools if that's a fit. I can't wait to see you, to give you a real hug. Thank you again for everything that you brought. And parents, take note of all the language and all the concepts that we've provided for you today, and have that discussion with your teachers, have that discussion at the system level, and see if we can help our children move ahead to shine and soar in the world.
Thank you for writing this book. I think that so many people will learn so much, and it will impact so many people. So thank you for looking at it from that side of things, Leah. Really appreciate it. Wonderful book.
Have a nice day, everybody.